Well, welcome to the Border Poll Journal for the 28th of May. It has been a wild couple of weeks since we last came on air. Bob is away, bobbing around somewhere along the west eastern Mediterranean. He'll be back in a week or two. I was going to have our program this week earlier, but I thought I'd wait till some of the events that are taking place somehow get, I guess, filtered through the various media outlets. And one of them, of course, was the visit of Charles III to Canada to read the speech from the throne that was created by on the slogans and so on that were made during the election that got the Carney Liberals reelected. It basically told us nothing that we didn't know before. The parts that stuck out to me were the frail king, stumbling through a number of pages of a prepared speech, which had very little impact, really, I think, on most Canadians. It was a Hail Mary pass in many ways, politically speaking, to try to get Canadians worked up about the situation vis-a-vis the United States. As everybody knows, President Trump is continuing his 51st state pronouncements. Most recently, today, he put out a tweet about the Golden Dome military expenditure that will take place to protect America from enemies unknown at the moment, and that he is to do this and put it in place before the end of his own term. Canada has been invited to participate, and according to his tweet, they can join the Golden Dome program for the paltry sum of $61 billion, or they can get it for free should they want to be the 51st state. I'm speaking in the third term, as should they, being us Canadians. Of course, there's nothing really on paper, I think, although I suspect very much that there are discussions in the background. And according to the sly comments made regarding the speech from the throne yesterday, that the link up between Canada and the U.S. on security and economic issues is going to be strengthened. Well, that is interesting because, the entire election was run by the Carney government on the basis of Trump derangement syndrome, for the most part, and saying how the United States is really no longer a ally of Canada in many ways, and that Canada should be looking east and west across oceans for real pals. And so, as everybody knows, the first trip that Carney took after he was elected was to visit his friends in Europe, particularly Mr. Macron and Mr. Starmer, and had some discussions with the other warmonger in Europe, in Brussels, the van der Leyen, the lady who is very much interested in starting a war with Russia. So now the Carney government is talking about joining forces with the European Union for rearming Europe. I don't know how Mr. Trump is going to take to that because it's going to be, I think, permitted or what's the better word I'm looking for? The Trump administration will likely look the other way until they've had enough and will tell the Carney people to knock it off and to get back into lockstep with NORAD and the interests of the Western Hemisphere. I, for one, have no idea why well, let me back up. We're dealing with elite globalists and a guy who was a hedge fund manager who thought in his career he could do whatever and say whatever without having too much trouble. But now, as in politics, I don't think he really understands the game, nor does he understand that the interests of the United States in the Western Hemisphere is not going to be upended by this nonsense about joining the European Union or making deals with China or Singapore or anybody else to buttress the sovereignty of Canada. This is a country that has 75 active tanks, that is got a aging military, less than 70,000 actually on the payroll, and you're going to be talking about how you're going to do this, that, and the other thing militarily. So at the end of the day, we are looking at some serious discussions that are likely to take place between Canada and the United States over the coming weeks, not months, weeks. And I think there's going to be some surprises that are not going to be a surprise to me, because I'm of the opinion that this is going to be the Western Hemisphere fortress, whether we like it or not. And the United States will rely less on Mexico and more on Canada when it comes to that. Particularly, I think it's disturbing that we have a European Union that's run by a bloodthirsty, evil character who is right out of the 1930s. This woman is bound and determined to pick a fight. You threw a proxy war with the Ukrainians, who, by the way, are just like cannon fodder out there. I would remind my fellow Canadians that thousands of them died from 1939 to 45 to get rid of her type, who wanted to go to war with Russia. Okay, we're not in the 1930s. I don't want to characterize her as the guy with the mustache, but I'm getting awfully close to thinking there's something really wrong with the Germanic types about this whole Russia thing. But anyway, the relationship between Canada and the European Union is a silly one to begin with. And now that Trump has actually said he's putting the European Union on notice that they better get their act together on the issue of tariffs and so forth, and it's given them, I think, till July the 9th or something to pull up their socks. This is going to run headwinds or this will have headwinds that will blow in the Canadian government's face with respect to the European Union. Now, there's a great deal of excitement, of course, on the internet, particularly over this 51st Nation freebie being given to 51st state freebie given to Canada from Trump if he builds the Golden Dome to include Canada. And some of the folks are saying this will never happen. Canada will never acquiesce to anything like that. Canada will never be in part of the United States in any way, shape, or form. Well, I would remind folks that you should never say never. In the post-national state, which is called Canada, if it becomes a dictatorship run by EU-style oligarchs, which is clearly what seems to be happening, the position of many in Canada will quickly change. And by the way, Trump derangement syndrome will disappear overnight if all of a sudden the economy of Canada goes down the toilet because of the insistence of the crowd that recently got elected to give America a bloody nose. This is really the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my lifetime. In other news, of course, we're watching the relentless protests being done by pro-Palestinian agitators and anarchists who are in all the urban centers of Canada and just don't get the message. The cowards in the government have no problem locking up truck drivers 4 years ago for honking their horns. But these Palestinian demonstrators are doing all sorts of things that are quite violent, quite dangerous, and they are Hamas terrorist supporters, and they're on the streets almost every day. Today they were blocking a security conference in Ottawa, and the cops had to finally open the streets because they were basically holding everybody hostage again. And my question is, don't these people have jobs? And it doesn't appear that they do. I think most of them are on some sort of public assistance because they're always out in the streets. Many have, I think, no business being in the country in the first place. And this is really the Trudeau-Carney post-national state on full display. And I suspect America and Trump is watching this nonsense. And at some point, it's going to be evident that they're going to lose patience with this Canadian clown show that's going on that is filling the country up with literally hundreds of thousands of people that have little relationship whatsoever to the social, economic, market economy democracy that Canada used to be. So I think the protesters know they live in a lawless post-national state, and they have absolutely no fear of the corrupt cowards that are running the place. So it's very much like what I said earlier. There's a whole lot of signs here. Things aren't going well in Canada. Watching and listening to that sad old man stumble through the word salad in stilted English and terrible French was painful enough yesterday. And it bothered me because it was kind of reminding me of the history books where you read about the poor colonial subjects being treated poorly by a gang of elites in the 18th and 19th century. And you wonder why in 1776 the Americans said, I've had enough of this stuff. And George V, who was also a bit of a lunatic, the Americans got the message and said, we're out of here. But it was painful. It was painful to watch King Charles do this. He was looked like a feeble guy on the chair reading this word salad that was dreamt up by some liberal backdoor guy. The prime minister was sitting there like a little boy on a little chair in front of him, much like he was sitting on the chair when Donald Trump had him in the Oval Office, and he spoke for 2.5 minutes out of a 45-minute meeting. But it was subjugation all the way, and the pomp and circumstance. Okay, so you ran out a bunch of Mounties on their horses, and it was so poor, and I'm sorry. I think it was almost elder abuse to bring Charles over, who's suffering from cancer and has treatments, and to suggest that the cronies in the UK and in the EU are going to save the post-national state through this sort of malarkey is really sad. Lastly, all the talk about the 51st state. There's a lot of polls on the internet suggesting that you have a choice, yes or no. Do you want to have anything to do with the United States, or what would be the result of having a closer relationship with the United States? At the end of the day, nothing has been actually provided on paper or in any legal or political form that suggests that there's a solid piece of proposal, if you will, on the table. The business with the Golden Dome at least attaches a price tag of $61 billion, when I'm not sure where Canada's going to find that money. But be that as it may, I'm not about to say yes or no or never to the whole concept of what does Canada, or that pink part of the map, look like once some sort of offer is provided by the United States to reinforce the relationship between the two countries. I did state that I thought that if we were looking at the dome and we're looking at really a north-south security structure, and clearly the economic structure is already there because 75 to 80% of all trade is north-south between Canada and the U.S. has very little to do with Europe or Asia in that respect. That maybe Canada should be organized as an unincorporated territory of the United States under the designation of a commonwealth, not the 51st state, okay? Because I'm not sure if the United States wants, a whole bunch of California-like socialists running around in the Congress mucking things up right off the hop. But perhaps, the best deal would be for us to look at what maybe is a more palatable relationship, that there is a sovereignty of the unincorporated territory, which means that you have a U.S. dollar, you have a U.S. economy, and you have a U.S. citizenship, but you're not necessarily part of the United States in the sense that if you look at Guam or Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands or other places, it works for them. And maybe that's something that might work for Canada strategically for the midterm. There's no question that annexation is not going to work as it's being tossed out just willy-nilly through tweets or statements by the president. That just irritates people, and it really requires a much more sophisticated approach. And the elbows up nonsense that comes out of the Trump derangement syndrome crowd is equally stupid. Okay, so somewhere between the two stupidities has to be some common sense in the middle where we can come to an agreement that the post-national state project that Trudeau was running for the last 10 years is a utter failure. And the old Canada that Carney was trying to somehow regurgitate through the visit of the King yesterday isn't going to happen either. And neither is, frankly, these art of the deal approaches by the president about Canada and the 51st state. A lot of this is just too silly in many ways, but there are components or kernels of truth within those. The trade thing unquestionably is north-south and has to be dealt with. The security issue between Canada and the U.S., particularly as it relates to the Western Hemisphere, has to be dealt with in a professional and in a solid way. And the Golden Dome is the first time a price tag is actually attached to that security relationship. And I'm sure that is going to cause some angst in the TDS circles, but I don't really care. It's time to move on. Lastly, let me just speak to the issue of Alberta and Quebec, both of provinces which have had just about enough of the obfuscation and various screwy deals that the Laurentian elites in the Ottawa, Toronto triangle moneyed families are keeping going, if you will. I understand the frustration of Quebec. I understand the frustration of Alberta. The interesting difference is that in the Quebec frustrations usually got them money. The Alberta frustrations is going to get them independence. There's a big difference here. When you're looking at extorting strength and power, which is what Quebec did by being the boogeyman for Confederation, the Alberta version is very different. It's bread and butter issues. It's the unity of the family, the unity and the aspiration of a people who are tough and have no qualms about going out on their own, and moreover have a shared relationship with their neighbor, which Quebec doesn't have in North America. So having said that, I would be very careful not to dismiss the Alberta separatist movement as being just a joke as some Easterners would say, or and some of them have actually said, okay, if you don't like it, you can leave. This is a stupid comment to make by certain Easterners, and frankly, if they leave, the country's finished. And maybe that's what happens when you have a whole bunch of people who really don't understand how Canada survived for all these years uh, with its traditions, its culture, and its fabric loosely woven. Now we have, too much of a good thing, which is wrecking the experiment, which became the post-national state, and that experiment is an utter failure. Diversity is not strength. It just has silos and globs of communities that have no interaction with each other, and in fact are hostile to each other. So this is not how you maintain a cohesive society. And I was dismayed yesterday in the throne speech where they went on about the heart of the country is Quebec. Quebec could care less. They just voted unanimously to have nothing to do with the very monarchy that said they're part of the heart of the country. So these are total fantasies that are created out of whole cloth here by people who really are grasping at straws in 2025 because the experiment that they created from 2015 is failing. And it really has opened the opportunity for someone like Donald Trump to come on and say, "Hey, that's low-hanging fruit. You got $61 billion. I got a deal for you." Anyway, that's it for today at the 28th of May. I hope you are having a great week, and we'll come back to you likely this time next week with another overview of trying to make sense of the news. Until then, stay